I just got back from ITNation Grow in Houston. What a wonderful event. It's early February 2025. I got to speak to 10 great guests at this ITNation Grow as part of Evolve, which are the peer groups, which I was a member of for, oh my goodness, close to 20 years. I was a facilitator for a while in the managed service provider industry. But I was invited to go there. Grow is a particular event in the middle of the Evolve meetings and on the Wednesday, where it talks to MSPs about looking to when they're going to make their exit, if they're going to merge, get acquired, or acquire others. It's quarterly event, but I had 10 great conversations. It started with Cass Lawrence from Blumera. Great conversation with Cass, Brian Hoppy, Kevin Hagemoser, who I've spoken to before, John Cooper, TJ Jackson was a great conversation with TJ, Tom Hermstead, great conversation. I first time I spoke to Tom. Hardin Byers, my goodness, I've known Hardin for 15 years. I haven't seen him. He was back. They're putting the band back together. I had a great conversation with Hardin, Nick Recker, MSP, Blue Alliance. Never spoken to Nick before. Great conversation. Sean Brown, my friend for many, many years. He's got an exciting new consulting firm along with his MSP that keeps growing. And Dr. Larry Little. I had the great pleasure of knowing Larry for 15 years. Haven't seen him for, my goodness, 5-6 years. And we caught up and we caught everything on camera. It was a great conversation. So I want to thank all those guests. I want to thank Arlen Sorensen for inviting me, Matthew Lavender, Scott Scroggin, and all of ConnectWise. Just a wonderful event. One of the breakouts at the Grow event. Had my two very good friends, Brian O'Shaughnessy and Rob Bruce, talking to the group via Teams, via virtual, about their merger, which is a great event. Proud and glad to be part of it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. I found myself at 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. I took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People ask me, how'd you do it? What's the secret? I need to lose weight. How'd you do it? How did I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others.
What does aviation mean to you? I know we briefly talked about this the other day.
What is it? What is
aviation? Flight.
As a representation of business, I think Tony Robbins uses it a lot. Business owners are like the pilots of their business, and so they have to treat it like that. And my role is usually as a navigator to help them, not to be the pilot or co-pilot, but to help them navigate where they're going.
And you were never a pilot.
I've never been a pilot of a managed service provider, but I have been a business owner 3 times in my experience, and I learned a lot from the University of Hard Knocks. And so I help people avoid making those same silly mistakes that I made, so we can make some bigger approaches at other flights and other trajectories, perhaps.
But your relationship to aviation, other than in the business sense,
is just a representation to visualize for people.
You love it.
Yeah. Well, I was in the Civil Air Patrol when I was a child, but
yes, the Civil
that's
Air
been
Patrol.
1,600 years ago, back in the dark ages. So, but I had a lot of passion for the organization of that, really specifically the not military. My family was in the military, but I really liked the way that they had order and intention, and the way that they controlled the environment. We were in a drill team. We had a volleyball team. You know, we had very specific starts and ends and intention every time we showed up at those competitions. So maybe that's where it was. I never ultimately went into the military, and I'm probably better off for that, because I really am an entrepreneur at heart.
Right.
But I like helping other entrepreneurs, and I can be an entrepreneur in my own business, but it's critical to be organized and follow certain kinds of rules. And I do that with EOS in a very similar way.
Yeah, I think I mentioned I was private pilot, and it's just constant checklists.
Yes.
Everything's a checklist, you know, and
I
did you
love
go
it.
through it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's so much structure there.
Well, even preparing for this trip to come to Houston, I had I should have brought the picture. I have a picture of the checklist that I used to get ready for the last trip that we were all ITNation Grow in Tampa. And I just brought that back out and said, well, why recreate the wheel? Let's shorten the time frame from start to finish to getting ready.
So we're here in Houston.
Yes.
ITNation Evolve with Grow. It's the beginning of February 2025.
Yes,
What are
sir.
some of your goals here, Kevin?
My effort today, well, and when I interact with people like yourself and other people that are inside the conference, is to let people know that I'm in helping private equity and other organizations that are trying to bring companies together in the M&A space to avoid letting other people, people that come down their pipeline, maybe not be ready for acquisition, and then to just be left without a transaction. So if they can come to me and get better improved operations over the course of maybe 6 to 18 months, that's a chance for them to put them back in their pipeline without having to go find a brand new logo. Everybody in the MSP is used to finding logos. It's hard to, if you've got one that you've been working on that maybe wasn't perfect, didn't sign the 3-year contract just yet, it's easier to go back to them than to start from scratch. So I'm helping private equity and people that are trying to merge with the same process.
And what is it about MSPs that attracts you, Kevin?
Well, they love EOS,
Yeah.
and they're familiar with it in a deeper way than most other industries. That when I started out being an operations guy, and you know the vernacular for that is the integrator for a company that's using EOS, I would approach other groups like SaaS companies or a coffee shop or an auto parts store. Only about 10% of them were familiar with EOS, whereas MSPs must have had an advocate long before I was even involved in EOS. EOS book Traction was written in 2008. I started getting involved in it about 2012. And so they had to have an advocate in this industry. And so I'd say 50% of them know it right away. I don't have to explain or even say the book. They're like, yep, we use it, or yep, I used it in a different company. So there's an ease and a reduction in friction for me.
And how important is it to stay close to everything that EOS has?
Good question.
Yeah.
I'm not a purist, and so certain EOS advocates might say if you're not doing it exactly to the book, then you're probably missing something.
I've heard that.
And my hot take for most people is that book was written, again, as I'll repeat, in 2008. That was pre-Facebook being available beyond just college campuses. That was pre the iPhone. That was pre what we know as LinkedIn and all the things that go along with business networking and B2B sales. I think there's a place for some kind of changes.
Yes.
That doesn't mean I want to wholesale start rewriting the book for him. Gino did a great job, but I do recognize that I'll meet people where they are. And some MSPs will say, I like this piece. I'm not sure I love that piece. Hey, a la carte probably isn't the best way to do it, but I can tell you there's some foundations that we have to keep approaching. And those are usually accountability, which looks like the scorecard.
Right.
Communication, which looks like regular meetings, the L10, and then execution looks like goal setting yearly and also quarterly. And I call that my ACE framework, but that's back to the ACE pilot approach. I didn't coin that, and that's, if somebody wants to trademark that, go ahead and try. It's not specific to me. It's just That's if we can get those three things, it's the runway we need to really move forward. If they aren't using EOS religiously or dogmatically, maybe, but they want to be better. If we can get those three things, regular meetings, setting goals, and accountability in the scorecard, we're doing good.
And do you use EOS internally?
As a one-person business, that book and this methodology isn't really written for single solopreneurs.
Right.
I have an assistant, but I wouldn't call an assistant and one person probably the ideal business to use EOS. And I'm going to get some flack from some EOS implementers maybe, but hey, I don't care.
Hard to have a level 10 by yourself.
Real hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you have accountability to yourself? I struggle with it myself. I'm an entrepreneur at my own business, and I still can't, make sure I do the ops things that I should do because I'm just one person. There's just so many hats you're wearing as a business owner, and it's key to have someone like me. If you've got a big enough team that could justify having EOS, you need someone to keep everyone doing the thing that they said they would do. A solopreneur has a hard time doing that, myself included.
And there's some platforms out there, right? There's a couple apps you can get that kind of help along, and they can't use the EOS framework because they're not officially affiliated, but you could tell that's what they're doing, and some are better than others.
Sure. There's software, and not to get confused with the software that helps run a meeting, like a level 10 meeting.
Right.
90.io.
It's one.
Stredi is one that's specific to managed service providers. That's really important. I think that is come up in the marketplace only in the last 18 months. And so if you are an MSP, check that out. There are EOS themselves has their own SaaS.
Do they? I didn't even know that.
There is the original Traction Tools, which renamed is now called Bloom. So there's other things out there, and people are still running them on Asana or using an Excel template.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Word,
That's not my ideal situation, but I've helped teams that are all over the map, from the most complex 90 installation to I just run it on a Google Sheet for them because that's the level that they're at, and I meet them where they are. So.
I recently talked to somebody, and they said that their advice for every MSP, and I never quite heard it. It was three. One was to, join a peer group. Second was to get a business operating system, and third was to get a coach.
Yes.
What do you think about those three?
I think that's great. I have clients now that use MSP Plus, and Brian Hoppy is one of the key coaches there.
Yeah, Brian.
I think they have a little different model than the EOS implementer model, and I think that there's different flavors for everybody. So explore some, or call me and discuss it. I mean, I can give you the inside scoop. I don't have a preference, and I'm not an advocate, nor do I get reimbursed for advocating one or the other. But there's some things that are right for some people, and I think it's worth evaluating all of them.
And when MSPs are choosing an integrator or somebody to help them like this, help with a coach, what should they be looking for? What questions should they be asking?
Great question. The first question for me is, since I'm a fractional integrator, meaning I work for multiple MSPs at the same time, is that do you need a butt in a seat? Do you need someone that you can walk down the hall, or in the proverbial hall, the virtual hall we now all live in with remote work, and be able to start a Teams meeting, at the drop of a hat? If you need that, you need a full-time integrator that's going to be on staff. You would not seek out myself or someone like me. But if you are still new and you don't have the money for the FTE and the costs associated with those, and if you have questions about that, call on me. We can talk about what that looks like. But I think the expectation is that if you have had no integrator and no ops person to this point, and you're just kind of getting started with an operating system in general, having a full-time operations person at $100,000+ a year might not make sense, because you won't be able to leverage them, and they're going to wonder why they're there, and you're going to wonder why they're there every time you see that check cut for their 2-week salary. And so, spend some time thinking about what you need. If you really need an office manager that's going to be making sure Becky comes in on time and that George is out on call correctly, that's probably not an integrator, even though they probably would like them to call you. They would like you to call them an integrator. That's probably not what they actually are. That would be an office manager. If you just need somebody that's going to help make your travel arrangements as the visionary and the owner, that's also not an integrator. Get a VA. So I experienced that, and it's really about leadership, thought leadership, and the things that are around that you're probably not having. And so there's a certain size that an MSP needs to be to really want a fractional or a full-time integrator. And, that depends on each person is different, but I think that it's probably $1 million plus of annual revenue.
So, yeah,
minimum.
Who won't you work with?
I don't work with like single, I wouldn't work with a single entrepreneur that just is a tech that runs out and does the things and has 3 or 4 logos. I'm probably not the best thing is a 100-person technician team. They need a full COO on staff, and they probably also need to designate someone to be the integrator in addition to the COO. So there's probably a sweet spot between 75 and 20 employees that's really can use a fractional integrator, and different reasons, different times for that.
When I talk to MSPs all the time, a former MSP,
Yes,
but these days, what always typically comes up, the 3 things that keep them up at night. One is security. They're worried about their clients getting attacked. That call that happens from their technicians, it's horrible. 2, I call it human capital. How are they going to replace good techs? How are they going to add new techs if some of their techs leave? Then lastly is just growth. We're here at Grow, and organic growth comes ringing across these MSPs. Many of them are tech-led. They aren't good at marketing and sales. So how are they going to grow?
Yeah, you hit all the 3. Those are the best.
Those are the
right
3,
there,
right?
That's
so
what everybody's talking about.
How do you help?
Oh man, I could spend an hour and a half talking about those things, and each one of those, when diagnosed by myself or maybe even their own EOS coach, has come along and said, hey, this is the thing you should be working on this quarter. If it's one of those 3 that you just mentioned, Joe, I would say that you have a strategic plan that needs to be in place. And I would sit down and say, well, what resources do we have as a team? That's what the integrator can sit down and go, okay, we can actually approach moving away from an owner-led sales methodology this year. Or no, we actually haven't concluded all of the relationships through the BNI groups and the LinkedIn connections. Let's keep going with that. We don't need to hire a salesperson and then figure out the comp plan, especially if they've never done it before, because the time involved in setting that comp plan up is complicated. So that's just one example of the 3 that you gave, just assessing where are they in this approach to all those things. If they've not done any security and that they're still struggling with even what software to use internally for their own clients, well, then that's probably something we need to get on right now, because with AI and the simplicity of creating these kinds of hacks and these kind of false situations and I'm not a technician, I can just see that if they aren't prepared now, they themselves are going to be hacked, and it's just going to something's going to happen where they're going to have either their whole livelihood is going to be at stake if we're not prepared for that in some way, even if it looks like a 6-month process. Let's just start it, as opposed to, holy crap, now we had a real bad incident and now we lost half of our logo. Our logos are all gone, or leaving or going to our competitors. Not much business there. So be careful.
Can a coach be an integrator?
Interesting. In the strictest sense, I'll take your question back just a second. An implementer would never be an integrator, because they operate in a different way, that they would have 10, 15, 20 clients at a time. They couldn't be taking the calls and the things that I do. I'm in every business that I work with, even as a fractional, I'm in there every single week, multiple meetings a week. So I'm interacting with their team leads, their other middle-level management, and the actual ownership class. An implementer or coach, a strategic coach of any kind, whether they say they're an implementer or EOS connected or not, is probably not going to take on that responsibility to hold and lead meetings, keep people accountable, strategically plan for the owners to engage with their own leadership teams. I couldn't say it's never been done, but I would say it's pretty unlikely, and it goes against the methodology that EOS has taught.
On the podcast, Kevin, I end up talking to a lot of therapists. And
Really?
It's not all tech. It would drive me crazy, Kevin. If I talk tech all the time, I'd lose my mind. Almost 600 episodes now. I can't.
I know. You talk about weight loss, and you talk about all of your interests and your hobbies.
Exactly. Yeah. So, as it's been explained to me, is that a therapist looks back, a coach looks forward.
Interesting. I love that. I hadn't heard it said that way, but that's effortful for MSPs. I think that they spend a lot of time going, this worked before.
Right.
What can I do that's worked before, and what is the plan going forward supposed to look like? And it's the typical problem of the old E-Myth, which was the, predecessor to the EOS, was just like, are you working on your business or are you working in your business? And most MSP owners find for a lot of it, to get to where they were at the couple $1 million mark, was probably worked in their business, and they are the lead technician, or they are just the smartest guy in the room. And how do you grow intentionally beyond that? That's the next step for most people.
And for me, joining the peer group helped me for that reason as well, because it got me out of the business.
For sure. And talking to other people that were in the same position that you were in.
Could never talk before.
Those are my best prospects and my best clients, who are the happiest with the work we do, is they're already in a peer group. So you think, well, the more things you layer on, you've got a coach through EOS, you have a peer group, and then you might actually know some people, and you have some informal connections that you keep up from the peer group and talk about things outside of the context of, just going to an event every quarter. Those are actually better to hear the advice and the direction that EOS and having an integrator could do than even somebody that has none of those things. It seems counterintuitive, but the more things that you have leading you, the better you can leverage all of these different pieces.
It's amazing the similar traits you see, Kevin, because once that happens and they come out of the business and you start working, I have a couple of these clients myself, and delegation is a huge.
How did you solve it? Yes, I want to know, how did you solve it?
Well, the thing is, I work with this one client who actually would still order the paper towels and pizza.
Oh my goodness! Yes.
80%, 80. If somebody could do it 80% as you can, you gotta remove that, and it's very tough.
How bad could a pizza be? I mean, 80%, you can't screw it up that bad. No, I think that's one of the key pieces for me, is that I sit in these meetings and I see where those kinds of things still exist, and I go, inside a same page meeting, I'll bring the owner back, and I'll, not in front of everybody, and say, hey, are you sure you want to be doing this? Like, you're making the initial calls, the outbound calls for all new prospects, like that's, and then you're handing it off to an account executive. Let's flip flop it. Why don't you only get involved when we're at the bottom end of the funnel, when your time can be used as real value and leading to revenue growth, as opposed to 90% of the effort leads to nothing. Let's get you into 90% of the effort leads to something.
It's so hard, because when I was a solopreneur, when these people they were doing everything themselves.
For sure.
And it was working fine, and they were working weekends, and they weren't, seeing their family, and they were gaining weight.
And it was all worth it, wasn't it? After you did all that, it was so worth it.
I remember we made a couple acquisitions, and then we made a really large one before Y2K. And so we were up to about 40, 45 employees, and we had a picnic, and the employees brought their kids and grandkids. And I remember thinking to myself, this little thing that I started in my father's garage has now affecting grandkids. I remember getting upset.
Yes.
It's like, what have I done here?
Yes, the weight of that. I think that's so impressive. Entrepreneurs that are willing to go out and do this stuff, and they don't think about it.
They don't.
And they go, oh, I'm responsible for people's mortgages and their cars. And like, if I hadn't done what I did 10 years ago, these people wouldn't even have, job. Not that they would be destitute and all be broke and living on the street, but it's like they are responsible for doing it. And so my effort, and thank you for bringing it up, is just, can I help them level that up? Let's go algebraic on this. Like let's multiply 2 times 4, and then really see what you can do. And then how deep are you impacting people's lives, and not just about growing revenue only, but like the depth and quality of interaction with your employees, and what your company's doing for them, as well as what it's doing for you, at the end. Like, when you exited, were you happy? I don't know.
I was.
Yeah,
I was.
I mean, and it's not just about money, but it's like, what can I do for my family now? But I think that the leveling up and the value that you provided all those families and their grandkids and everything along the way. Yeah.
What's that old story where, a storm happens and all the thousands of starfish are up on the beach, and the little girl comes over, she picks one up and just flings it in the water, picks another one, and an older person says, you can't rescue all these starfish. And she picks up one and throws it up and says, well, I rescued that one.
Yeah, right. Don't stop. Don't stop me. I was in the process of doing it. That's what she's thinking.
Has there been anything in the last month or so, Kevin, that you changed your mind on?
Oh, that's a good question. Wow, you're hitting the hard ones. I'm sure there was I wish you'd asked me this, earlier in the day, and then I could have had something really thoughtful produced. I'm just struck every time by the fun of interacting with people now. I was just even preparing for my session here, and I was thinking, my gosh, I'm spending all this time on making sure the slides are right, and I don't know if anybody will really even pay attention to it. I'm making sure my talking points are just so, and then I think, just show up and interact with people, whether it be seeing Brian Hoppy in person. I've only been working together over Zoom for these years.
He's great. Just had him on. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I brought a friend with me, TJ Terrell Jackson.
TJ's coming on soon. Yeah.
Just like, we can make this enjoyable, and even the MSP owners, we can make it all enjoyable again if we give it structure and have the right people helping us, see where we've already fallen down, or we may be not giving ourselves credit to take this and enjoy the things that we're doing every day, because we only get so many turns around the sun.
Yeah, it is true, and it's a really good point, Kevin, because I'm on Teams calls every freaking day. Just seems like hundreds per week, and then once we fly somewhere and we see each other face to face, it just feels great.
Yeah, it does, and just it feels different. Like the depth that now I'm willing to talk to you about this thing, and I'm willing to help somebody. And if somebody listening to this said, "I listened to this thing that you were on," would you? Of course. No questions asked. There's no fee involved. Just give me a call if you have a question about this thing. Let's talk about it. Like I'll give you whatever. It's the true go-giver approach that Arlen Sorensen has been really providing to this, Connect and ITNation and all that stuff for many years. But it's something I lived long before I ever realized there was a book about it.
Yeah, Bob Berg. Yeah.
Sure.
I remember when he came and spoke when I was in the HTG, which is now Evolve.
Yep.
And he did a great thing. He has a way of memorizing people's names. And so, I don't know, 50, 60 people. So when he got up to the stage, he finally said, I want to thank everybody. And he went through every person that he met.
What a parlor trick. It's
where
not a trick, but it's brilliant.
My last name is Panone. And he told me later, I said, how'd you remember? I says, well, I kind of looked at your head and I said, Panone Pin. I said, Pin, now just remember that.
Well, I want to ask you a question. Yes. Yeah. How did you get to Joey Pinz? Tell me
it's pretty boring. It was a golf nickname.
Oh, for the
I was
golf
playing
pin.
well in a golf trip, and I was getting next to the pin a lot, and so that's
all
it.
Right,
yeah,
all right.
And plus it's easier to remember than Joe Pinone.
Yeah,
and it's single syllable pins anyway. But Joey is
it's a good URL.
Yeah, pretty damn
it
boring. So I mentioned in the '90s I started the MSP, and I wasn't paying attention to myself, Kevin. I'm in front of the doctor. 340 pounds. And she's like, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. Just rocked my world.
That had to hit you hard.
Yeah. So I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel, upset with myself. Next 6-7 months, lost about 130 pounds, kept it off. You can't look at it as a finishing line. Many people do, because they can't revert back. You've got to stay with these habits. They're lifelong habits now. But people ask me how they want a shortcut. And I always say discipline. I got routine. I got some motivation. How does discipline play a role in your life?
I knew you were going to ask me that because I've listened to the podcast and I've seen the website. Discipline for me probably is a mixed bag. Like I love to say, I get up in the morning. That's not it. It's just it was what is true to myself, what is true to the people that I want to serve. And it isn't just like, oh, great customer service is my calling. That's rarely it, even though people put that on their core values list and put it up on their wall in their conference room. It's how did you get to that place? And for me, the discipline is I'm going to try to keep doing well for my clients and the people that I work with and interact with and my friends and people like yourself and TJ and Brian, because I don't want anyone to make the same silly mistakes at business that I made. That the discipline is that's a huge fear. I don't want anyone to stumble on the same stuff that I stumbled on. So let's avoid it. Let's learn about it. Let's make sure we're prepared when we come into these conferences to tell someone that's maybe going through a hard spot what it looks like to not be in that spot, and then give them an additional resource besides myself and to call on and say, hey, ask them about this. I can tell you as much as I want from the theory and the EOS and these different things from these books, but I've given you all I can give you. Now go call, Bill Smith and tell him what you just told me. Tell him no more than that and see what he says. Because they all also generally in this space are go-givers. They're like, yeah, I'll help you. I'll tell you whatever I need to help you get to the next step. And then They get to stumble on the next step, which they will. We all do, but at least they are past that silly little speed bump.
Mixed bag.
Yeah. Yeah. Discipline. Yeah. Like you say that to me and it goes back to the military thing. And I'm like, getting up early. That's not interesting.
That's interesting. So you equate discipline to like militant structure like that.
I think most people do. I think most people think that when you're talking about discipline, it means you do these X number of activities. And I don't think it is that. I think it's internal. That's what I started saying earlier.
Yeah.
It's
Self-discipline.
It's based on you and what you need to do to be the best you to yourself.
Yeah.
Not to be the best you to the impression of someone else has about what people should be doing when they're doing it. Like that is useless to me.
What motivates you, Kevin?
I think the same answer. Like that
Mixed bag?
No, what motivates me is I wanted it to be money when I was young. I remember telling people I want to be a millionaire. And I remember saying that to a mentor, and I'm sure he just thought, what are you even talking about? And I'm still friends and connected to him, and I look at him and I think, God, I was an idiot. What was I even saying? What did that even mean? Now I recognize what motivates me is just to do good things for people that actually matter. And that doesn't mean only philanthropic things, though that could be part of it. Just how do I interact with someone going through something that they need help with? It could be someone trying to lose weight, though I'm not going to give anybody advice that you'd be better for that. For myself, it's maybe a relationship thing. Just even just being honest. That's what motivates me. Just can we get to an honest moment about whatever it is that they're going through so that I can maybe even just explore it for myself. Again, remind myself how I've solved that, or remind myself that I'm still working on that too, and that we can do it together. That true connection and its depth here in person at these conferences is one of those ways to do it.
Yeah, impact. It is. There's a philosophy, I forget who promotes it, that helping can be very selfish. Because when you help, because it just gives you so much satisfaction.
I'm sure that if the point is just to go help them so that you can get the return dopamine hit, that's probably not the best way to do it. Motivates me to do those kinds of helping moves is because I just want to be real with somebody. And so it is selfish, but it wasn't helping to get the dopamine.
Right.
It was helping because I wanted to be...
Natural side effect.
Exactly. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So given that motivation, how do you measure success? Yeah.
My success right now is am I keeping myself busy and not in some kind of loop? One of the things that I would think would be a complete prison for me, being an entrepreneurial spirit and helping other entrepreneurs, is just going to work and hating it. If I know I'm clocking in at 8 and leaving at 6, I can't think of anything that makes my hands sweat worse than that. I mean, it's not just about hard work. It's just like the monotony of it. Staying away from that is my goal now.
That could be a definition of hell right there.
It is. And that's the joy of working with entrepreneurs and MSPs, is that they're all solving different problems at different times. So we never have to talk about the same thing. We rarely have to talk about the same thing every single week. And I have a rule: we don't talk about anything more than 3 times. So if we're talking about it the third time, either the wrong person is trying to solve the problem and we're stuck, or we actually don't know what the problem is. So we have to peel it apart anyway. So let's spend some time doing that. Yep. I just stop a conversation right in the middle. Stop.
That's good.
Third time I've heard it.
Problem.
Third time I've heard the same problem. Okay, somebody needs to paint the lines on the parking lot. This is the third time. Third meeting we've had about this. Okay, something's wrong.
Right.
We're not moving. The right people aren't being held accountable, or we don't know what the action actually is.
Yeah, that's a really, really good idea, because do they really want to solve it? You know, you have to ask yourself, right?
Yeah, I think some teams actually spend a lot of time trying to figure out what their daily job is, and it's more fun to just keep bringing up the same things. I was part of a team that was not an MSP a few years ago, and this one cycle would just happen over and over. I had to stop them and just say, "Visionary, are you sure you have the right people here? This person seems not interested to move anything forward, and they actually seem to relish bringing up the problems."
Jeez.
and not finding any solutions. So they were very much wanting to be directed, but also kind of just living in that space of that negative experience that everyone keeps having. And oh, yep, again, his name was Luke, has brought up this question again, and I'm like, why can we not just resolve it? Does he need direction from you? Does he need clarity for himself? Where are we stuck here? And I think that the rest of the team had just kind of resolved that this person was going to always be kind of a curmudgeon stuck in this space. And that person is ultimately holding teams back. So do you have a Luke on your team? If you do,
Interesting.
let's talk about it, because it'll leave you in a spot you don't want to be in.
I love what you're doing, Kevin. I love what you're doing for the industry, for the MSPs. Thank you so much, Tom. Anybody listening or watching, how can they get in touch with you?
You can go to my full name, kevinhagemoser.com. It's my website, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
Hagemoser, Hagemoser.
Well done, sir.
KevinHagemoser.com. We'll make sure to
got it.
put it up. Thanks so much, Tom. Nice to finally
Thanks,
meet you face to face.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Take care, sir.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypinz.com. There you'll find lots of resources, and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.